What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today I have a very special video for you, and a lot of you guys always ask me about clinicals, but for me that was almost 4 or 5 years ago. So today I have a special guest. This is Angela, and she's going to tell us what it's like to be an ultrasound student in clinicals. So this is her. Hey, Angela.
Hi.
Thank
Hi,
you.
y'all.
Thank you so much for meeting today and wanting to share your experience. If you guys haven't seen her on Instagram, she actually documents her experiences on there. She's got a few videos. I love seeing her stories because she talks about her stuff when she's like out of clinicals and whatnot. So you guys need to go follow her. But I'm going to hand her the floor so she can just kind of introduce herself for those of you who don't know who she is.
Hi, y'all. My name is Angela. I'm from Houston, Texas, and I'm actually a second year now officially sonography student. And yeah.
Yay, that's so exciting. Oh my gosh, I remember you from the very beginning when you were just kind of like in the midst of it all, and now here you are. I remember being so excited that you were going to clinicals. So, if you guys haven't seen too, in my other video, she was actually in there kind of explaining how she felt about the ultrasound program. So definitely I'll put the link down below for you guys to see that. But she's here to share what it's like to be in clinical. So how would you describe like your first, like for somebody who's never been to clinical, how would you describe it to them?
It's a lot of fun, honestly. Like, I love it. You walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm going to be doing every single day. It's definitely nerve-wracking. Like, I was sweating my first day. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a mess. But it's so much fun because you're actually there doing it. Like, you go from class, learning everything, kind of visualizing what you think it'll be like. And when you're there, you're like, oh my gosh, this is even better.
Yeah, it's crazy because like I remember they didn't my program didn't really like give us the whole what goes down in clinical almost. So a lot of times we found out everything in clinical because how my program went is we did our labs first, then we're off to clinical. And the lab is just there for us to go back and practice, right? So for you guys, how does it work when you're a student and going to clinical?
Yeah, so actually, my director does such an awesome job at trying to prepare us for clinicals because, like you said, usually most programs don't. They kind of just throw you out there and they're like, good luck. But she actually did a really awesome job. So we got to learn how to drive stretchers, which is still a challenge, but got our hands on some stretchers, wheelchairs, how to help move a patient to another bed or move them onto the stretcher or the wheelchair. And so she gave us like scenarios that would go on. So she definitely prepared us really well. I mean, I can't say to be 100% prepared, but she gave us a really good idea of what our days would be like and what to expect.
That's amazing. Shout out to her because I think that all programs need to do that. I'm not sure why they just want to throw us out there into the wolves. But, this is why I started doing the YouTube channel because I just want people to kind of know what real life is like, especially in the hospital setting. There wasn't much in the hospital setting. So are you in a
Mhm.
hospital setting?
Yeah, I am. Actually, both of my clinicals have been in a hospital setting.
Okay. Do you really like it? Is it what you expected? Or are you like kind of waiting for what outpatient looks like?
Honestly, so it's a hospital setting, but they do have the outpatient schedules and stuff like that. But I feel like I really like it there because you do have, your scheduled patients and stuff like that, but then you get some ERs thrown in there, some inpatients thrown in there. So I really like the craziness of the days and how they are. So in a clinic setting, it is way more tight. Like the schedule is and in ours, like, yes, it's a very tight schedule, but we definitely have a little bit of room. So it's not as crazy.
That's good. I mean, it's hard to kind of explain to people like as far as outpatient and hospital goes because they both have their like pros and cons and how they both work. And when people think outpatient is easier, sometimes I'm like, sometimes it's not necessarily easier. And like for hospital, when they say it's easier, not necessarily easier either. So, how would you explain to somebody basically how the workload is in a hospital? Like, how many exams do you get? I
Mhm.
know you say you get a lot of different things. So, how is the workload, especially at the places you've been to clinicals already?
Yeah, so like the first place that I went to, I would say officially this summer, it was about it would be one tech and she'd be alone by herself from like 7:30 a.m. I believe until like noon. And she would bust out some days like a lot of exams. Like I wish I could even remember. Honestly, it felt like 10 to 12 sometimes. Like it was a lot of exams because they'll have like double book her sometimes and stuff like that. It was just a crazy amount. And then the other tech would come, same thing, and they only had one room. So it was wild. And then once that tech came in, it was about 2 o'clock. Our other tech would come in and she'll stay until like 9 o'clock. But they would see a lot of patients. I want to say like on a really busy day, maybe like 40 patients, I think, somewhere around there. But it was a lot. And then this other site that I am at now, it's about 4 techs usually. And honestly, I feel like their schedule was not as packed, but it does get busy there too because we're like back to back, and then we'll get ERs, and then we'll get inpatients. So yeah, it's a lot. Some days are really slow. Don't get me wrong. Where we're just sitting there, and I'm like, I'm gonna go fill some gel bottles, I guess. But then other days are just super overwhelming.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of days where I just forget to go to the bathroom or drink water because it's so busy. And you just want to get to all these patients in a timely manner and you want to make sure you're giving everyone the right
Hmm.
care. So I know it's a lot. And as a student, now you're starting to see it all in clinical. And it's kind of like the stepping stone to you becoming an actual real sonographer out there in the world by yourself. Because as a student in clinical, you always have someone you have to basically lean on and like get your feedback on. They're teaching you and whatnot. So do you feel like after all this time, are you going to feel confident kind of going into the world by yourself? Like, do you see it kind of forming? Because I know as a student, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, how am I going to know what I'm looking at? But now you're here. So how do you feel about it?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So some days I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm really starting to get the hang of this. And other days I'm like, oh my gosh, I need an adult, aisle 7. Like, please come and help me. But honestly, no, I do. I'm starting to feel like my confidence is definitely growing. And I think that's one of the biggest things is gaining that confidence. Like, okay, I know what I'm seeing here and I need to be confident and know this is exactly what it is. And there's some days where I'll find pathology and I'm like, well, I found this. And they're like, if you found it, I'm like, well, yeah, but can you just double check? Like, I still always want them to double check. And they're like, don't be crazy. Like, you found it. Like, you got this. Like, it was good. You did what you needed to do. And I'm like, okay. But right now, I see the picture slowly coming together for sure. I I just like knowing that I have someone though to double check. And I feel like hopefully I'll start, be more confident and just be like, okay, here it is, and I'm ready to do this on my own.
I love that. And that's a good point that you brought up, which is confidence, right? Obviously confidence is key in this profession. So I'm actually just like everything that you said is what I would hope for a student is for them to just realize, you've got this, you know what you're looking at, you understand it. Now just kind of go for it because you won't ever learn unless you actually scan and do it on your own. And you kind of do have to make those mistakes along the way. And I know it's kind of like, okay, you can't make mistakes, lives are at stake. But it's kind of different when you're in clinicals because you've got someone there to just really reiterate the things you need to know and see and look out for. Because even as a tech in the future, when you graduate, you're going to be on your own and you're still going to be making those little mistakes and you still will learn how to grow from them. So everything you take now in clinical is going to help you when you become a real tech. So I'm definitely excited for you because I see how you're doing. Do you have any advice for students right now that are currently in their programs or going to go to clinical?
Yes. Okay. So definitely brush up on your pathology because sometimes I'll find something and I'm like, oh, I remember studying this, and then I can't remember what it is. And I'm like, man. So sometimes I wish I had like a little mini cheat sheet with me, like what it looked like. Having something like that, I think would be super helpful. But definitely knowing your pathology helps a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, because you're better able to recognize it. Like, of course, you're gonna see it and you're gonna know something's wrong, but knowing what it is and kind of trying to clinically correlate it together. And also, one of the biggest things too, that I'm definitely working on right now is getting a really good, it's like learning to get that history from them and asking them questions. Like if somebody has, some pain and you're rolling them to your room from the ER and asking them like, hey, what did you eat today? And if they're like, I ate this huge juicy, greasy burger, okay, in your head, you're like, all right, I'm gonna be looking for gallstones and trying to put those things together beforehand. It's definitely a huge thing.
Yes, definitely. I think a cheat sheet. Somebody's got to make something like that and make a little book or something to like bring into clinical. But yeah, definitely bring like I always tell people to bring like a notebook because you can always write those things down. Obviously, not when you're like scanning your patient. You're not gonna be sitting there writing down, but after the fact or when you're following your clinical instructor around, you write those things down that they tell you because you're not gonna remember everything that they tell you. I'm sure it's a lot of information you're getting, right?
Oh, yes, all the time. Sometimes I'm like, "Oh, okay, they'll tell me like, do this or do that, or you could have done this. I'm like, okay. And I walk out, I'm like, did they tell me? But I'll get my little notebook and I'm like, okay, so you said I should do this, and that, right? And honestly, the only way you're gonna learn too is by doing it. So don't be scared when they try to have you do something, just do it. Cause I promise it'll stick so much better when you're actually doing it.
Yes, practice, 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 and actually scan. Do not be afraid to scan and pick up that probe because that's how you're going to be better. And that's basically you having one more step, one more patient for you to be able to understand that type of exam. Because eventually you're going to have to do scans that you've actually never scanned before and it wasn't in clinicals and you're going to have to figure it out on your own. I mean, there were a lot of things recently that I've scanned that I've never scanned before. Patent urachus. I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? And I mean, I just kind of looked it up and tried to figure it out on my own. And those are the things that clinicals should prepare you for. So I'm definitely glad that it sounds like you're at really good sites.
Yeah, I love my site so much. Like honestly, both of the sites have been really awesome. Like I love the text so much. They're super helpful. It's just like definitely two different things because my other one, she started me off slow, was kind of like, okay. And this one, they're like, okay, go get the patient from the ER. And I'm like, whoa, 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 what's going on? But definitely, I mean, you can always say, you're not comfortable doing something. My take on it is I always say yes. Even if I don't know what I'm gonna do, I'll just be like, okay, I'll do it. And just I know I'll figure it out. And I always say that I'm like, don't worry guys, I'll try and figure it out. And if I really can't, I'll come and get y'all. And honestly, okay, a random side note. So I seen a funny video, sonographic tendencies,
Mhm.
Henry, that he had posted, and it was like that the student went to go do the exam, right? And he's like 40 minutes later or whatever. And they go and they're like, how do you, find the patient or how do you start the exam and stuff? Y'all, do not, if you do not take 40 minutes or however long, so exaggerated, to do that. Like, get someone real quick. Or honestly, what I do, my very first thing when I'm at a new site is learning how to use the machine. Learning how to use the machine. Just take your time. If there isn't a patient, just be like, oh, can I go actually learn the machine really quick? And if you have any questions, okay, how do I start the exam? How do I pick the patient? How do I send the exam? Things like that, because I promise it'll save you so much time.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh, that's absolutely incredible for you to say all of that. Those are great tips. And people are actually probably really afraid to do that kind of stuff. Exactly why Henry posted 40 minutes later and they finally realized they couldn't get it. Like, so that 40 minutes later, exaggeration, is basically time spent you could have actually just took a picture of that bladder or that pancreas. And obviously you're a student, you're still learning, so don't be afraid. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that.
No, honestly, because there has been times where, okay, as we know, that CBD is stressful, so stressful. So I've actually come up with a thing. So instead of worrying about an image I can't get, I skip over it. I'm like, I'm gonna get all these other images I know I can get and not struggle and struggle and struggle on something. Like, okay, maybe the order might be a little out of order. Honestly, the texts don't really, or at least my texts don't mind. They're like, that's fine. And I'll tell them, oh, I was really struggling with liver length and CBD. So I took all these pictures, whatever, whatever, and then they'll be like, okay, so they'll just have to go and retake the CBD and the liver length, and then you're not wasting the, time. You're helping the patient get out of there in a good time. You don't want them laying there forever. So, yeah, life hack.
Absolutely. That's a really big hack. Oh my gosh, you guys, if you're still here watching this video, this is some great content that Angela's giving you. Like literally, you don't have to sit there for hours trying to find the CBD. You can move on, get the things that you do know and see, and then go back to it eventually. It's not the end of the day if you really can't see something right then and there. So that's a very good tip, and I appreciate you for mentioning that. You are literally, I can tell, learning so much from your clinicals, and your instructors are doing such a great job because you are very confident in what you're doing. And yes, even though you're not going to know everything, you're still willing and able to scan. So I'm just super proud of you, and just seeing you grow, it's just been so amazing.
No, and you've definitely been there since literally day one. And actually, it's officially been a year since, I started the program, started my page, just wanting to help out and kind of document the journey. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's crazy how time just flies.
It really does fly. I can't believe it's been a year, and I'm just so excited for everything else that's to come for you. So I appreciate you so much, and for you talking on here and explaining. Like, I know I could talk to you for hours about ultrasound because we have before, and I wish we could talk for hours, but of course, YouTube and everyone has such a short span of paying attention. So, what I want to do though is eventually, when you are almost done, a little bit more later, I'd want to get you back on this channel so you can kind of, show everything else that you've learned throughout your journey.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I I love to share. Honestly, I really do. That would be super awesome. And also, I try to, share as much on my page too. I try to do little stories and stuff, tell y'all about my crazy stories that I've had. So, yeah.
I know, I absolutely love that. So, where can they find you?
Yeah, at angelac.dms on Instagram.
Yay! Yeah, so definitely you guys go check out her page, go and follow her and see all the things she posts about. I absolutely love and adore her so much. Like you're such a sunshine, and I feel like everyone really needs to be, it's all mindset thing, right? And everyone needs to be positive, but also just kind of be willing and ready to go for it. And I absolutely can see that that's you, and I know you're going to succeed and do so well. So thank you so much, and I appreciate it. I just have a few last questions for you. Okay, so
Yeah, let me know.
what was the first scan you've ever scanned? Do you remember?
So actually, whenever I was kind of preparing for this, I'm like, I don't remember what my first scan was, but my director made us like these little books, right? So we
Oh.
could document all our scans. And my first exam was actually a left lower venous study. So
Oh,
I'm like, oh, that was my
yay.
first exam I ever seen.
That's so cute. Oh my gosh. Do you like veins? Do you like doing vascular stuff
You know,
or not?
honestly, so we just officially started learning vascular at school, and at first I'm like, man, I don't know if I really like this, but actually doing it in clinic, I'm like, okay, I actually think I really like this. The only thing is like really trying to stay still, and then luckily sometimes we'll have someone helping us with like an augment, but I'm like feeling cool, like augment, okay, freeze, send you back. Like you're really using the machine when you're doing vascular.
Yeah, people don't even know how hard it is to multitask and do that stuff because you're not only looking at the patient, you're trying to hold your probe, you're trying to manipulate the patient to like make sure they're breathing, you're trying to make sure that their leg is still, and then you're also moving and touching the keyboard. It's a lot, and people don't know it's a lot. So props to
Mhm.
you for learning vascular, even though you weren't really doing vascular yet in class.
Mhm.
So, um, is clinical what you expected?
It's more than I expected. I love going there so much. Sometimes I'm like, can I just go another day? Like it's awesome. I mean, don't get me wrong, it gets a little scary sometimes and a little bit intimidating, actually a lot intimidating. Especially when you have to go get a patient, like an inpatient or an ER, and they're hooked up to things, and you're like, okay, am I allowed to take this off? Like those kinds of things. I'm like, oh, I did not really think I was going to be doing this kind of stuff. But honestly, you can get the nurse if it's anything crazy, so don't be scared.
Yes, don't be scared. Always get the nurse. You know, don't do anything that you probably shouldn't. And I mean, that's all common sense kind of stuff. But I'm definitely. I remember not even I didn't even realize that like you would do like obviously ventilated patients or like really, just crazy patients that you would never expect until you go to clinical. So that's why I absolutely love clinical. And I think clinical really defines the type of person you're going to be in the field because that's where you kind of learn everything. And then it's kind of hard too though because say somebody's at a site that doesn't learn that much or isn't able to get enough scan time, right? I've talked to a bunch of students like that. What would you have to say to them? Because I know it depends on the site and it's hard. Not everyone's going to get an amazing site like you have. So what would you say to those who aren't able?
Yeah, so honestly, that's a really good point, and I feel like a lot of it has to do with you as a person too, because I know someone had went to my site previously and their experience there was completely different. So I was scared. I thought, "Oh my gosh, like this isn't going to be a good place for me." And when I got there, I was like, "You know what? I'm going to come in here. I'm going to talk to my tech." And like I said, first day I'm like, "Can I look at the machine? Can I learn the machine?" Okay, and then she didn't let me scan too much at first. Like I said, I was doing a lot of observing, but I told her, hey, this is my plan for this semester, for my summer semester. I want to get these comps. I want to be more confident in scanning right upper quadrants and things like that. And then I think she saw how determined I was, and she was like, okay. And she started letting me start exams, and actually I've called the radiologist a few times, and she was giving me more responsibilities to do. And I think you just really have to show them, like, hey, I'm here. I want to learn. This is going to be my career. I'm passionate about it. And they're going to see that and they're going to be like, all right, come on, we'll do it then.
There you go. I'm so proud of you for saying that because a lot of times it does depend on the person as well. And of course, if it comes to the end of the day where the text they don't really help you, I think that's something you should tell your school about because it is your future and you're the one that has to kind of go through all this. You're paying for this. Like if they're not willing to teach you, you kind of have to either if you do what Angela says and show them how much you want this, show them you're driven and want to help in every way versus a student who's lazy and doesn't really care. Think of your situation that you're in, see if you're doing everything that you can. And at that point, if you're not getting what you need, you've got to get what you need and figure it out. And that's honestly the hardest part of this is getting your clinical site to give you time to scan because I do know of other hospitals in the valley where they have a hard time teaching their students. There's only 2 machines and they're super busy. So this just goes for everyone out there in clinicals, just like Angela says, like put the drive in, take the initiative and ask, even if it's little things and just helping them turn the patient, get the patient, move the patient, anything you can do to help them will show them that you really want to be there.
Yeah, definitely. And then sometimes it's just like, like, can you please help me? Like, I want to be a great tech like you one day. Like, you can mold me and then hire me, and I could just be your little person that you want.
Also, if you're very good in clinical, it's kind of like a whole interview where these people can recommend you to other places. So take it as that much as you recognizing this is a part of your future and everything that you do here is going to help you get that career that you want. How did you prepare for clinical? Was there anything that you do or did?
I mean, honestly, I just kind of try to think about like I kind of made a list, like I said, goals, things I want to accomplish for that semester. So like I said, if whether it was doing write up or quadrants, things like that, I would make a goal list that I wanted to hit. And then I did review anatomy. I would kind of go back and watch our lectures and stuff like that, try to refresh myself, look at all my protocols. Because sometimes, you start off scanning for us was aorta, and at the end, we're learning how to do exams. So you're kind of a little rusty. So I tried to go over all my protocols, what the images should look like, some tricks that I could try to remember that we were taught. And yeah, that's kind of what I did because I felt like, oh my gosh, do I remember how to scan a liver? I don't remember. So just kind of refreshing everything really, really helps you and kind of brings everything back. And so whenever they ask you to scan something, you're like, okay, I remember what that image should look like or what I'm looking for.
Yes, definitely. So, is there anything that you wish you'd known beforehand going into clinical?
Definitely, I think just how affected you can be sometimes leaving, after seeing like a really hard case, you're driving home and you're thinking about it and you're kind of crying because you're like, oh my gosh, like I wish people wouldn't have to go through this kind of stuff. And when you're scanning, of course, you're looking for something to be wrong, but ultimately, when there isn't anything wrong, you're happy and you're like, yes, that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it does get kind of hard and kind of sad. You really feel for the patients, but I guess just kind of trying to have the mindset of like, well, I'm helping them on their journey to getting better, and this was like that first step, and you're helping them.
Absolutely. That shows a lot about you. So I'm definitely grateful that you're able to show what it's like to be a student in clinical and feel for these patients as well, because this is part of our job. I mean, medical field is hard, and people, like we always talk about, is that they think that we have an easy job or a chill job. But while most of the time it can be, a majority of the time it's very hard and difficult to go through. We do see a lot of abnormal things and hard things that people go through every day. So definitely take clinical as an experience where you're learning so much and take it all in, because once you're out of clinicals, you're on your own basically. I know you're gonna do great. I know you're gonna do great, and I really don't doubt that you're gonna. I really feel like you're gonna get a job like right away, and I can already see it. We're just manifesting.
Thank you. I'm like, I hope so. I'm like, I'll be happy to go anywhere. Like, I'm just ready.
Any other last things you want to say to everybody?
Yeah. So honestly, y'all, one of the things, like I said too, with clinic is also just knowing that sometimes you'll get patients that, maybe they're being a little bit difficult, they're not sitting still, or maybe they're talking a lot, which isn't necessarily bad, but if you're doing a thyroid, it's not good to be talking a lot and just those kinds of things, and just knowing that this is your exam and it's okay to tell the patient, oh, can you please sit still? I know you might be in pain or it's uncomfortable, but we really got to get through this and I want to get this done as quickly as possible. So you need to know how to take control of your exam. And I know going into it as a student, sometimes you tell them to turn, or I don't want to ask them to stop speaking, or whatever it may be. But you have to understand, like, this is your exam, and just have that, whatever the word is for that, with this, and being able to tell them, like, to help them get through that exam and help yourself, because it does get a little like, you're like, I should I just stop now and just get the test so they could do it? But hey, I can take charge and I'm taking control of this exam because it's my exam.
Yes, absolutely great advice. This is your name and your initials and your pictures that you're taking. So everybody, you better listen to everything Angela said today, because she's in it, she's in the action, and she knows what she's doing. So I definitely appreciate you for being here. And obviously you guys can tell we can talk so much. So if you want more info, please go follow her on Instagram. And of course, keep on asking your questions. Obviously, we're here for you guys. So comment down below if you have any more questions, and I'm sure we can get those answered for you, because there's a lot to cover about clinicals. So thank you so, so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so, so, so much for having me.
I hope that everybody took something from this video today, learned something, and go into their clinicals ready and excited.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if y'all ever have any questions or anything, I literally love helping y'all so much. So y'all could always send me a DM or anything. I got y'all.
Thank you. Yes, go check her out. And hopefully you guys stay tuned for our next follow-up video when we see her, you know, with more clinical sites and more experience, and you can talk more about how life is going. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, we'll see you guys in the next video, and don't forget to push that like button and subscribe to the channel. Bye.